through. He's like, what message? I'm like, live, stop listening to people who memorize spiritual concepts to make themselves feel better.
That's good.
It is Thursday morning. It is an episode of Dualistic Unity Raw, and it's a short one because it's a Thursday morning. So we're only going to be here for like 45 minutes, and I figured I'd mention that early on because we tend to forget as we're about halfway through. And by we, I mean Andrew. So that all said, I figured I'd start here on something I was going through this morning, admittedly inspired by a fellow TikTok creator who was going on about how spiritual practices, or rather, how it's the practice itself and not the spiritual concepts that really matter. And I agree with that. I agree with that to a very large degree. You know, the problem that I had was that this specific creator does nothing but talk about spiritual concepts. They do nothing but reference other paths spoken of and taught by other people, and thus teach the concepts that go with those paths in all of their content. And they do so with an underlying, yeah, and so you get what you can out of this. It's like, okay, great. Well, why not just talk about what I could have got out of it without mentioning any of the esoterica, without mentioning any of the spiritual paths, without mentioning the teacher, without mentioning the history, without mentioning, who you're accrediting the insight to? And it's because you're still getting some juice out of that. You're still like, look how much I know. Look how spiritual I am. And you can go on and on and on about how it's the practice while you're still talking about the spiritual crap. And it's because it's your bread and butter. It's because that's where a lot of your followers come from. They know you as the spiritual guy, right? And I get that. I mean, this is one of the reasons that I make very little content. And when I make content, it's very fucking short. And very rarely do I ever mention any spiritual path or teacher. Even here on the show, sometimes I'll talk about, Zen stories, right? Sometimes I'll talk about things that are referenced in the Dhammapada, or I'll talk about things from the Tao Te Ching. But I do those more or less because I want to note they're out there. I don't think you should go looking for them. And this is something I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me, and I know the disagreement comes from their attachment to their path. But the fact is that every spiritual path has been formed over time after someone had a recognition of reality. And then the path became a way to get to that recognition of reality and immediately started deteriorating it. And so what I'm saying is that while spirituality is obviously what we all think about in terms of spirituality, spirituality is actually a degradation of true spirituality. As soon as it becomes a structure, as soon as it becomes a path, as soon as there's a fucking teacher, you're stepping away. You're stepping away from the reality. And so I know early on, the night that I kind of realized, oh shit, I had never made it about me. I had also realized I had never forged my own path. I had never taken the responsibility of learning from this experience for myself. And it was in that recognition that it dawned on me that everybody else, all of their messages could be degraded. They could all be distorted over time and we wouldn't even know. And so there's no path to follow that isn't going to make you into a fucking follower. And so you have to be responsible for your own insights. So imagine a world where there are no spiritual paths. Imagine a world where there's no spirituality. Imagine a world where everybody's just living. And it's on you to just figure it out. That is the reality of spirituality, because that is the connection between your consciousness and your physical being. It's in being yourself. But spiritual paths, spiritual teaching, spiritual teachers, they actually almost make it more difficult at the end of the day because it's so easy to turn to them. And as Krishnamurti said, as I reference another one, the messenger is always a traitor. The messenger is always a traitor. That includes me. That includes Krishnamurti. If you're looking to us, you're missing the point.
Because there's nothing anyone can tell you to get you closer to being yourself. Like, there's no thing you can read, there's no thing you can look to, there's no thing you can be told, there's no right way to do anything, jumping into any situation. And right now, the thing I'm going to shift about this situation is quitting Discord so I don't keep getting the boop boop because I stopped wearing my headphones because I realized wearing my noise canceling headphones was allowing me to not hear myself as much as I talked. And it's not like right or wrong necessarily, but there was a couple days of discomfort when I took them off. And I was like, oh shit, it was like I was more in reality than I was with my headphones. And you can go back to any episode. I am wearing them every single episode, every single one. And it was like a buffer. It was almost like another buffer. And it's so funny how you start noticing more, you start being honest with yourself and how much like, the well of insights can just be from looking at yourself honestly, getting a good look at yourself and being like, oh yeah. Oh yeah. And not taking it seriously, not and especially not taking it seriously as you start taking a more good, honest looks, like the importance of not taking yourself seriously is super, super important. But to go back to being yourself and just like being able to be yourself, like you don't get any hit of a guarantee of anything, how to live, overarching live life, moment to moment interaction situation. And this is like, maybe it seems obvious, but it's blowing my mind how every interaction, like there isn't we've created sort of social norms, small talk sort of thing. There's no correct interaction. There's no thing to talk about or discuss. And for me, I was talking, Amanda and I chatted for a bit this morning and just, I was talking about how much discomfort I have in moments of where there isn't like, I've always looked to something like some topic, something to bring up, some right thing to say. And so when I'm left with myself and there's just, dead space or something, the discomfort and just like fucking bringing something up or talking about something or bringing up a topic or sharing something is felt. And it's strange how much I like I felt like I didn't feel it for a while, or I just avoided it, or I didn't want to look at it, or all these things. And like this week is just a cascade of just fucking seeing more of myself from the dualistic perspective, because again, it's both and neither all the time. As much as I wanted it to be, I wanted it to be just one side. I wanted just the unity, because then I wouldn't have to look at myself. It's There isn't one or the other. It's always both and neither, and they inform each other. They inform each other so much. And if you're only looking at one or you're only looking at the other, then there isn't it's gonna make it more difficult, because it already is uncomfortable as shit, like, being more and more and more and more and more honest with myself in all the ways, from, like, all of the interactions that I've had throughout my life, all of the, things that have been held on to, reasons for it, reasons that there is, a desire to be held on to. All of it is uncomfortable. It's not comfortable to see or look at, but not taking myself as seriously as I go, at least it's not like sucking me down to fucking a pit of hell, because like I'm I'm here. At least I'm not doing it so much anymore. At least there's that. All those things. And there's a sensitivity to it. And there's so much more freedom in that, because it's informative. It's always informative, but it's informative for me. It's not informative from a book. It's not informative from Alan Watts or Krishnamurti. I can't learn about myself reading a book. I can't learn about myself listening to a podcast. I can only be willing to look at all the ways that I'm distracting myself, be honest about those, stop doing them so much, and see what's there and see what's under the surface. And that's can feel a little more intense than, reading a book, trying to build on, because so much of that is just building more on top. It's, I want to feel better. I want to feel better. Where's the next insight? I want to learn this so I can feel better about this thing that I don't want to look at, because there's so much on top of it that I don't want to see. There's just so many layers. And even, you know, this week, I've been thinking, like, what the fuck am I like? I don't have anything. Have I ever had anything to say? And it's like, I'm going through a lot in my experience right now. So there's all that stuff to say. And so there's that. And if I can be honest with myself and not take myself so seriously, there isn't a hesitation to talk about just like the sides that don't feel good, or the willingness to admit how fucking, self-involved you can really get. But again, everyone's got their shit. My shit's not special. Feels special to me right now because it's, a lot of back and forth, but like everyone's got their stuff. And so it's like being honest about it. It's like not, it's an option, but it's not important in the sense that, oh my gosh, it's like I'm at the center, and it's like making it about you again, the spotlight effect. But yeah, there's a lot there, and it doesn't fucking come from any book or anyone telling you shit. You cannot look around for that self-honesty, because people are going to give you what they can be honest with themselves about. That's about it.
See, and in that state, now you can go and you can read from any teacher or any path or any speaker whatsoever. And what you'll hear, instead of them telling you the right way, is a version of you desperately trying to figure it out. And so suddenly you're getting entirely different lessons because you are self-honest, because you are the source of those lessons. You're not looking to learn from someone else. You can't do that. But you can learn from being yourself here and now and genuinely taking things in, recognizing that we're all coming from that state of being. That's one of the reasons that out of all the people I talk about Krishnamurti, right? And it's just because Krishnamurti really did try to put that whole thing like, just, I'm not here to teach you shit. Like, we're just here to talk. That's all we're doing. Alan Watts, same thing, right? But people will miss Krishnamurti and people will miss Alan Watts. And it's because they look at them as spiritual teachers. Despite the fact that Watts would have laughed that off entirely and call himself a spiritual entertainer. Right? But that's the point, is that it's not them, it's us. Right? Like, what's the difference between somebody listening to Jesus say, love God and love your neighbor as yourself, as opposed to somebody hearing themselves as Jesus say, love God and love your neighbor as yourself? There's a world of difference there. Right? And that's when things start to make sense, when you recognize that everybody's coming from that same place. They're coming from here and now, and the recognition of that. Nobody knows what the fuck they're doing. If anything, they're just trying to give you some hints about why they're not panicking about that. That's it. And what's funny about that is, like, aha, I got to follow the path. And then it becomes a source of panic. Right? But it's all really simple at the end of the day. That's why I've said spirituality gives spirituality a bad name. It's because it becomes spirituality instead of just self-honesty.
Oh, because you're constantly like, am I on the path? Am I on the path? What's the right way to walk the path? How's the path go? What's everyone else walking the path? And it's like,
what color is my chakra? All that crap. Like, it's just, what's my aura? What are people seeing? What came from my past life? It's like, oh man. Like, all of that is just keeping you from the reality.
all of it, like all of it. And you start to see that like all those things are just buffers from being here. From the self-judgment to this feeling of self-importance to the, the chakras, to the prayers, to the books, to all of it. All of it has potential. Doesn't mean that it's gonna be a distraction. It can also, so there isn't even a thing that's the right or the wrong thing. It's where you're coming from, how you're looking at it or viewing it, or ingesting it. Are you doing it with a purpose, or are you just doing it? And it's been hitting me how much I'll sometimes wonder, like, am I in the shit right now? Am I not in the shit right now? It's like right now I'm just sitting on a chair in front of a microphone, looking at a computer, Ray's on the computer, having a conversation. That's it. Is it the shit? Is it great? It's like, it's what it is. All that stuff is just me trying to reconcile with knowing something about what's going on. Like, I don't even, when I actually start to wonder, like, am I in the shit right now? Am I not in the shit right now? It gets very obvious how much that's just me assuming something. Like, just kind of assuming just to keep whatever is actually going on at bay. Give me something else to do, something to, avoid what's going on right now or distract myself from what's going on right now. And the only reason I do that is because I fall upon an assumption. And so much of it is involved with me, what it means about me. And if that's not there, and if I'm wondering, am I in the shit? Am I not in the shit? Like, can I even know? I can't really know. Then it doesn't. Then it doesn't have to do so much with me, and I'm actually here involved in the situation, and like playing my part, whatever that means. Just being myself as best as I can, and yeah, with no rhyme or reason to it, no place that it's getting me or becoming. It's like it's it's so insanely simple, and yet there's so many ways to make it complex. Like, it's insane how much we can just make this into something else as, you know, a collective, and just moment to moment turn it into something, into like on it really does feel like, that's a lot of limitless potential to turn something that is inherently what it is into a whole thing, a whole massive sort story and thing. And oh, it's beautiful and fucking insane and crazy, all of it.
I like to find it funny when I can. And again, the only reason I can do so is with the recognition that regardless of the pain, regardless of the suffering, regardless of all the very real experience that goes with all this shit, we are eternal. And life will continue on. And we will be that life. So while the current, I guess, era of humanity might be very challenging, and a lot of us might be going through a lot of shit. Eventually, we're just going to be squid-like things, chilling the fuck out on the ocean floor. We are already. That's a nice thing. There's versions of us right now that are not worried about anything. I'm glad that they're out there. I'm glad. But it's interesting because you were saying, it's really simple, right? And it's like, yes, it is. It's really simple and yet extremely complicated. And what I mean is that the insight is I just need to let go, just be myself, and I don't need to follow anything. I don't need to do anything. I don't need to be anything. Blah, 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 blah. And then everybody around you is influencing you as you go about your day. Everything around you is influencing you as you go about your day, and you're influencing it. And there's this incredible interplay between you and everything else because there is no separation whatsoever. And so while it is simple, just be yourself, there's a lot of shit that goes with that. There's a lot of things that are going to go through your awareness, through your consciousness, through your body, in fact, and you're going to go through it all. And regardless of the ebb and the flow, regardless of the pushing and the pulling, of the influence of reality, quote unquote, and whatever you'd like to call it, the lesson remains the same. Be yourself, which is just like being present. You always are. It's just how much shit you've piled on top of it that's distracting you from it. So you're always yourself. You've always been yourself. You have always been facing the unknown. You have always been leaping into the unknown, regardless of how much you thought you were prepared, regardless of how much you thought you knew what you were walking into, regardless of how much false certainty you had committed to. You never actually knew. You just convinced yourself you knew. That's the funniest part about all of this, is that we're already doing it. Everything that we're talking about in terms of like, just be yourself, just let go, be here in the present, blah, 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 blah. You're already doing it. You're already doing it. And on top of what you're doing, you're like, am I doing it? Am I doing it? Maybe I'm not doing it enough. Maybe I should do it more like that guy. Maybe I should do it like that guy. And what's funny is that regardless of how much you're doing that in your head, you're still already doing it. You're still already reality. You're still already yourself. You're still already the present. Just how much are you struggling against it?
It's a great question and a great point. Like the thought that we got to get to it, that we're going to get there one day, just become one with it and all that crazy. Like, and every book, everyone you're looking to, like, there's sort of this assumption as soon as there's someone else being looked to, that there's some sort of journey, that there's some sort of path. And so, I've been going back and forth with like the desire, and then I realized it's just kind of another form of hiding in a sense, to like delete all my social media. And and it exactly, no, because it's like, because now I'm getting smacked in the face with like a lot of reality of myself and like things I didn't want to look at and all that stuff. And so there's a side where it's like, you can't look to anyone, be, teacher, blah, blah, blah. But like, it's an opportunity to communicate and connect and like, sort of documenting whatever the fuck you're dealing with as you're going. It's like I've always been doing that just from a certain perspective, and even to assume that me being, incredibly egotistical throughout parts of my life is like there's even resonance there. And so to the thought of not doing it anymore, if I'm feeling less egotistical, is almost like an ego. And again, I'm getting a little bit in the weeds of like dissecting certain actions and whatnot, but there's almost the sense of hiding again by doing that. It's like, no, this is probably where I'll be not the most use on social media, but like less in my own way. And so posting from there, it's like to run from that just because, I realize how much I've been holding on to certain perspectives of myself would be another form of hiding. That's all it would be, is like another means of avoiding. And now it's like, no, face this. Like, posting that video I posted yesterday, just being open about how I have fucking maintained a perspective of myself that has buoyed me and made me feel better about myself. Like that doesn't feel good inside of me at all to say, yeah,
Do you judge yourself when you're drowning for using a life preserver?
no. Yeah, that's a good point. Mm. And it's just starting to swim finally. It's like, oh, I wasn't
You
actually.
stop bitching about the water.
Oh, dude, I even remember, like, it's so funny. I've been getting memories of being a kid and like jumping in to the water, like learning how to swim, like that feeling is so much of what life is like, because it's that sense of and then you're like, oh, I can. Okay. All right. But there's the, you know, there can be the hesitation beforehand, and it can feel like, you know, can I do this? Can I not do this? Like, there's one way to find out. Only one way to find out. And yeah, no, it's like, and because that's a side of what we're even talking about, is that like the ways that we buoy ourselves, like to have some semblance of certainty, some semblance of control. If I think about myself in the right way, in a good way, then I can feel good about myself. But it doesn't work. Like it doesn't work straight up, like at all. And unless you're just avoiding everything in the world, it's the only way it works. But that's not even working, because you're still avoiding. Like you can't actually. hide yourself ever, ever. You can't be hidden from the world. And I've thought that I could. I've thought that I could. And it's still like, again, my own judgment about things. But at the same time, part of me is like, all right, time to shut the fuck up and just keep living and doing things. But, you know, it is what it is. Like, it is what I'm going through and dealing with. And that's what, like, the podcast isn't about anything besides us just being here chatting. Like, there isn't a direction. Like, you could talk about something, I could talk about something entirely differently, you could talk about something entirely differently. We could just keep going back and forth if we wanted to. It's not like it has, and there could be a point to that. There's something there that's made. And so, god damn, dude, like, the amount of just like a sense, and it's gotten way weaker, the sense of the conversation being about something, but seeing how strong that poll was, like, oh, we're here to chat about everything but me, like my experience, my shit. I'm gonna talk about everything but that, and then not know what to talk about because I'm avoiding my own shit. And so much of, god damn, was that like a bottleneck, is just not wanting to look at myself.
I find it so funny because you've done nothing but work through your shit for the last 2 years. It's just that you were doing so from a place that you felt comfortable and safe enough to do so. Well, and that's been the series of crashes that you've had over the last year, especially, where all of a sudden it felt like the whole ground underneath you just gave out, and you're like, "Whoa!" Right? Well, it's because all of a sudden you had let go of another assumption that was buoying you, right? And so this is a process, man. It's really what it is. But you're always doing your best. You're always doing your best, and you're always trying to work it out. You're always trying to work yourself out. It's just not recognizing that gets in the way. Not wanting to recognize that, the discomfort of that, the feeling of isolation that goes with that, all that shit. We just avoid it. And the less you avoid it, the more you start to feel like you're actually being yourself. But with that also goes awareness and sensitivity and all of that fun shit that all of those spiritual paths are talking about, but limit you from getting to, right? Give you a perfect example. Somebody here was talking about God in the comment section. And I'm like, there's no God. And somebody's like, are you sure? And I know the question. It's like, are you certain? And it's like, stop playing word games. The point is, whatever you're thinking about in terms of it being God is a fiction in your head. It's a fiction. It's a concept. It's a concept that would not exist if you weren't trying to figure something out. If it wasn't important about you to figure that thing out. If you weren't trying to escape something that comes with figuring that out. See, the whole thing is all just fictional. It's all just in your head. And so when I say there's no God, it's not what you think I mean. Right? What I'm saying is that whatever it is you're thinking about is not it. And as long as you're thinking about it, you're missing it. And it will always just be a fiction. It will always be something outside yourself. It will always be, something that's omnipotent and all-seeing and super intelligent, not personal at all. Not personal at all. And that's very much the point. And then there was another follow-up question about do you listen to the binding of something or other? And my response was, have you listened to the episode? And I meant that genuinely, because this entire episode, what I've been saying is that the spiritual path is getting in the way. The spiritual text gets in the way. The spiritual teacher gets in the way until you're no longer a follower. See, I don't seek any of these books anymore. I don't read spiritual shit. I don't read spiritual shit. I don't watch spiritual shit. When somebody's like, oh, you got to check out this. Awesome. I don't. I really don't. And the reason is because, life's going to inform me, as life does. I'm going to run across things. I'm going to run across stories. I'm going to run across new types of music, new types of art, new types of expression, because life is an organic thing. But if I'm in there going, I got to study Buddhism, I got to master the non-dual path, I'm just superimposing what I think on top of what would be happening otherwise. Again. And it's because I just don't have faith in my ability to learn from existence. And yet, what's funny about that is, why do we pursue the spiritual path? To learn about existence. which is here and now. I've asked Christians this. If there was no Bible, do you think you'd find God? And they'll say straight up, nope. And they're half right there.
Oh my god, and, like, how much that's not existing in reality, like, all of that, and you've said that before about, not reading spiritual texts, and, like, you probably said it early on in the podcast, and part of me was like, "Yeah, but there's a bit. There's something there. There's definitely something to learn or share or be able to do," but it's not, like, there isn't, and, you know, like what I was saying before with like being in the shit, not being in the shit, being on cloud nine, not being on cloud nine. It's like I'm sitting here in a chair on a microphone talking into a screen, into a camera. Like that's what's going on right now. That's what's happening. There are comments going on. We are having a conversation. We are going back and forth. And all that stuff, like, oh, I'm this, oh, I'm that, oh, I'm learning this, oh, I'm this type of person. Like it's all conceptual, all of it, and it's fucking fascinating how we're walking around, like, not in physical reality, like, straight up not in physical reality because we've almost, like, destroyed physical reality at the cost of fictions in our head. Like, we're not actually involved because we're so focused on how we're doing in that reality instead of being it, instead of existing, like physically being in reality. And again, like being yourself, you're always yourself. You're always in reality. It's just how caught up are you? So it's not even like, because then there can be this drive to like, you know, actually be fully in reality or not be caught up in stuff. And it's like, it's all a spectrum. It's all, there's not like one or the other necessarily, but there is an intensity to actually being involved, not making so many assumptions, not thinking so much, not using that as a to buffer yourself. Because as you were saying, like with responsibility and recognizing that, like as you gain sensitivity, you start seeing like what the fuck's actually going on in reality. And until all of this, Dualistic Unity, the podcast, like there was no reason for me to look at reality. And it was, well, okay, not no reason, but there was a
You know,
lot.
you did a lot of work before you got here, right?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's all reason. I mean, the first
Yeah.
time you had your heart broken, the first time that you felt like a bag of shit for being judged, the first time you felt anxious for being, tested, the first time that you spoke back to your parents or an authority figure, the first time you questioned God and the existence of Christianity, like all this shit's work. All of it is you stepping away from what you've been told. And that all takes faith. See? It's little bits of faith. And you're like, well, I wasn't really being myself. To the best of your ability, you were, right? Because we were all taught to be something. And so every step outside of what we were taught to be is a step in the direction to ourselves. Right? And it's been a long path, motherfucker. And it certainly didn't start with dualistic unity for anyone. For anyone listening here, I know you're like, oh, my life has changed so much since I found dualistic. If you weren't ready to have this conversation, your life wouldn't change at all. Right? And it's you that's changing it. You're the change. You've always been the change. That's why the conversation is relevant to you, is because you're changing and making it relevant in the embracing of that change. Because that's what this conversation is about. It's like what you were saying earlier. All of a sudden, it's like, I don't know what to talk about, but I've got a fuck ton to say about that. I've got so much to say about this feeling of being here now. Like, there's just so I could talk about this forever. Welcome to my world, right? But it's coming from a place where you're not talking about spirituality. You're talking about being yourself. You're talking about just being yourself because it has been the question, the query, the challenge, the fucking riddle your entire life. How do I do that? Can I do that? I'm going to do that a little bit more. Oh, wow. There's a lot of blowback for that. Right? That's what teenagers go through all the time. Like with whether it's with teachers or their parents, they're trying to find their own space. They're trying to find themselves. Right? And the people around them are resistant to it. because they never found themselves. Right? But we're all learning the same lesson. We've all been learning the same lesson. It's all the same lesson from fucking birth, because that's where we started as ourselves.
Yeah. And the whole time, like the whole time, we've been doing it and even recognizing, and like, sure, there it seemed like there was a fog for a while, but that doesn't mean that things weren't being taken in. That doesn't mean that things weren't being learned and perspectives being garnered, because there are times where I feel like I haven't lived at all. And again, that's just that's just a assumption, and it's like, I know that. I know that I haven't lived at all. I know that I haven't learned very much in my life. It's like I don't.
Everything is relative. It really helps to remember that what you're feeling is freedom relative to the freedom that you felt previously, or that you can remember or accept that you felt even. Okay.
Yeah. 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 That's a great point. And it's funny how we can have these, even just calls like this. Like, I very much don't feel like reality right now, going through stuff and things, but at the same time I am. And like, even in a moment, like as soon as I'm like, oh, I'm not, it's like, says who? Who, like, what am I like? Yeah. And like, what assumptions am I making, even assuming that this isn't, you know, reality expressing itself, and from wherever that is. And sometimes it's like, even to express certain things, if I was feeling like, you know, I don't like, less in my own way, it's like there's certain things that I almost wouldn't talk about or wouldn't express or wouldn't share. And so it's not even that, God, it's not even like there's a right or wrong perspective to take. It's just not assuming that you're speaking from a perspective, being self-honest, being willing to look at your own biases. And even all that is assuming that there's like, a right way to express things. Like, shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up, and keep going. And it's not even about how you're going about things. Like, you're going about things you don't really know. But
I think this is an excellent point to bring in a consideration that goes with this period of self honesty, because, man, have I ever fucking seen this before. And usually people hit this and then somehow they equate self honesty with telling everyone their shit. And so all of a sudden they're out there telling the most personal stories, right? Telling the most personal stuff. And it's because they want to feel like they're being self honest without actually focusing on the self part. Right. And that's the whole point. It's like, I want you all to accept me for who I am. It's like, who are you talking to? Who are you talking to? Because all the people in the world can say, yeah, what you did isn't worth judging, but it's up to you to figure it out. Until you figure that out, it's not going to mean shit what other people say. So, what are you asking them for? What is it you're trying to share for? Who are you trying to share with? That's the wonderful part about self honesty. It's you doing it, it's you dealing with it. It's about how you reconcile it. It's not about anyone else. I know I went through this period back when I had a YouTube channel, and there was somebody I was talking to, and he hit this period where he's like, I just got to be self honest all the time. And he started telling people about like the first time he stuck his finger up his butt, and he started like he was telling everybody everything that he had ever judged himself for, and you're just like, oh man, like I get what you're trying to do, but telling me isn't going to somehow just like remove this from your consciousness. Like it's still going to be in there. So what I think about it's irrelevant. What I think about it is irrelevant. And so that's very much the point, is it's self honesty. And that happens in the wee hours of the night, or it happens in the daytime hours where you're sitting by yourself, or it happens on the bus. The point is it happens to you, for you. And it's not for everyone else. It doesn't have to be, but you can take what you learn from it, and that can come across. Right? That's the honesty. And it's like somebody else was in here saying, have you heard about the binding of something or other? And I was like, no. And I don't care. And they're like, well, I just thought there was something useful there that you would like. It's like, there's more useful than if you were to say something that you're learning about yourself right now. Because that's actually reality speaking. Now, right? In real time. Who knew? Classes were in real time. I didn't have to go 3,000 years into the past to learn this shit. But that's very much the point.
Oh, we love going years and years into the past. And fuck, I appreciate you bringing that up, because that's something I've done for sure. Like, and it's almost like a way to feel like you're doing something without doing something in a lot of ways, like telling everyone your shit or your stuff. It's like there's almost more a continuation of self-validation in that. It's like, this is my shit. And it's like, it's just shit. Who's telling you it's yours even? Who's even telling you it's yours? Yeah, I am. But, it's like, that's how it's just shit. Like, as a world, there's shit. As me, there's shit. And so, am I sharing things? And I can get so caught up in this as I'm sharing something for someone else. I'm doing it for for the audience, like that Rick Rubin clip where he was asked if he ever, considers the audience, and he's like, literally never do that. And it's almost more comfortable to assume that you can even know the audience, because you can't, because you're the audience. You are the creator and the audience. It's like, it starts and ends with you, motherfucker. It's not, there isn't, like, your assumptions about the audience aren't the audience. Guess what? They've never been the audience, because you can't make assumptions from another point of view. Like, there isn't an audience. It seems like there is, but it's an audience of one, it's a creator of one, it's a interactor of one. It's just, and so being self-honest in that sense, like, you actually have to take it in. And sometimes, talking about the first time you put your finger in your butt or something is like a way for you to feel. It's like confession, oh, I just have to confess. It's straight up oh fuck, it's the same thing as confession. It's just putting it out there so that you can reconcile with it, instead of actually taking it in and shifting and changing.
That's why I left YouTube. Who am I trying to tell? All right. And that was it. And at the time, like, I had a child that was about to be born. I had a lot of reasons to leave. Right. I had a lot of reasons to leave. There was a whole lesson in front of me. Right. Rather than always reaching for the lessons I had learned and expressing them, there was a whole lesson in front of me. Now I'm at a point in my life where I can learn the lessons and express them on the fly as I go, without needing to, without, having to communicate it to anyone. This is why I like the podcast. This is why, social media, very often I refer to clips or shit that I've done previously. It's because, what am I trying to say? Like, I won't bend myself out of shape. Like, oh, I haven't made a TikTok video forever. Please. Like, at the end of the day, like, there's enough shit on there. I'll just recirculate something, because I know what I'm saying. Like, I know there's value in the other stuff I've said previously. I know there is. I may not agree with all of it now. That doesn't mean there wasn't value in it. All right. Whereas the real lesson is happening in front of me. And that may lead to something on the podcast. That may lead to something in me, more importantly. Right. And that's the focus. This is why I said to you, live your life. The conversation's a result. If you focus on the conversation, then it's just about you, and not in a way that's healthy, in a way that's going to have you twisted up in knots. We got about a minute and a half left here. I just want to mention to everybody, we still have a few tickets left for the California mini retreat. We had a winner of our California mini retreat ticket, and I have sent them their coupon code, and they have yet to process it. And so until they pick up that ticket, we don't know what the hell is happening. So pick up that ticket, man, because I know I've sent you all the information, so that way we can make sure you're going. That said, there are a few tickets left. They're all single bunks, and they're really inexpensive. It's going to be awesome out on Big Bear Lake. We hope you can join us. I'll pass this over to Andrew. This has been a fucking dope episode.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm super excited for that California retreat also. That place looks fucking epic. If we get a sunset like that out the backyard that's got in the picture there, I might no, never mind. I'm not gonna say that. That's I'll keep that one in. Don't have to express everything, you know. Like you held in that dirty joke the other day, but then you put it in the chat. So there's that. I can keep some things to myself, you know. I felt like I can't. And that's I'm getting a good look. I'm gonna yeah, chew on that or take that one in because it's it's been for almost the last couple of years. Like there's been, I know we're at time now, so I'm gonna stop in a sec. But there's been like I can't even I almost have to say it. Like I can't as a way to avoid taking it in. And it's like a strange dynamic that I'm starting to get a much better look at. But yeah.
I've actually said to you a few times, not often, but a few times, there are insights I have I never communicate because some of them are just for you. All right, everyone, we're going to sign off here. We'll be on Patreon in 15 minutes at Tier 2 call. It's Thursday. We'll see you there.